Hello and welcome to our next video. We are on lesson number 5, the Chicano movement. Y'all are going to follow along with me in your guided notes. And today we're going to get into what the word discrimination means. We're going to talk all about the Chicano movement and some key court cases that relate to it. And we'll finish up by talking about an activist named Cesar Chavez and a very famous boycott he led. And we will also finish up by talking about the Chicano art movement. So first off, discrimination. Discrimination means to treat people unfairly based on features like their race, their age, or even their gender. And so in this, drawing here, we see, 3 birds of one color, and they are not treating the bird of the other color very fairly. They're not letting him be included. They're looking the other way. They're kind of turning their back to them. So discrimination is what these birds are doing towards a bird that looks different from them. So we're going to talk more about discrimination in the Chicano movement. The Chicano movement was the cultural and political movement that raised some awareness of the history of Mexican Americans and wanting to better their civil rights. So Chicano usually refers to Mexican Americans. With this movement, there are a number of goals. The key ones are here on your screen. So one of the first things that the Chicano movement really takes and tries to improve is the education system. They want better schools in their communities. They also rally behind the rights of farm workers. They want to have more awareness and some more pride in their history, and also have greater political rights. So I had mentioned this one in an earlier video. I think it was lesson number 3. But the East LA walkouts is an attempt to get at goal number 1 here, which is better education. And so in 1968, students in the Los Angeles school districts started to notice how unequal and unfair their education system was. And they organized this massive protest. It was a walkout. The students left school with signs, and they rallied, and they promoted very articulately their goals. So even from these signs here, we can see, hey, we need more people that look like us in administration. That way our rules and our policies can also include us in mind. Throwing out racist teachers, right? Students Chicano students in those communities were experiencing really racist and, terrible treatment from certain teachers that were not treating them with any sort of respect, right? They were discriminating against them. And that is obviously not okay. So a couple court cases that relate to the Chicano movement. The first is Mendez versus Westminster. And what the court case said was that the segregation, that separation of children of Mexican descent from white children was unconstitutional or illegal, right? So this instance right here is represented by the signs, right? We serve whites only, no Spanish or Mexicans. The court says, hey, that is completely illegal. We cannot do that any longer. Hernandez versus Texas is another key court case that sometimes shows up on STAR. It's a court case that helped stop racial discrimination of Mexican Americans in the judicial system. So this is a court case that gets at our 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal protection of the law. And sort of the background on this case is Mr. Hernandez here was charged with murder. He had a trial, and everyone in the jury was white. There was no Hispanics, there was no Mexican Americans on the jury, because at the time, right, when you check, what race you are, Mexican or Hispanic was under the category of white, and so they could just give them a white jury, and to the law that was okay. They argued, hey, that's not okay. That there was some discrimination happening there, that the jury was maybe discriminating against Mr. Hernandez. which affected the ruling. And so they were successful in that. Courts cannot be racially discriminatory towards Mexican Americans. That leads me to these two activists, so Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. They are two very well-known Latino rights activists, and both of them actually became leaders of a union called the United Farm Workers. And so kind of in its name there, right? It's a union that works to protect the rights of farm workers, right? People who work in the fields. This is their symbol. You often see these on signs and flags. The UFW, again, is that labor group that protected all of those farm workers. They needed some representation. They needed a group to, advocate for their issues, and UFW was that group. So something the United Farm Workers did was lead a boycott. So we've seen this come up again and again. It is a very effective tactic in civil rights. The idea is we are going to avoid these products. Boycott lettuce and grapes, right? Boycott grapes. There's blood on these grapes. Don't buy them. The people who are growing your food are being treated terribly. You're not getting paid well. There's no health care. We shouldn't support that system. And so to boycott, we are avoiding lettuce and grapes, not just for a day, right? Not just for a couple weeks, but for years, until finally the companies that employ these people start to take this seriously, treat them with more respect. So this is I believe it's Delano grape strike. It could be Delano, I'm not sure. But like I said, y'all, this took years, 5 years, in fact. Here's Chavez holding the sign, "Don't buy California grapes." And so this protest lasted 5 years because the farm workers were getting very low pay. Their working conditions were unfair and unsafe. And generally, they were not treated very well at all. And so this was a strike that was led by Cesar Chavez and was successful. Last slide for today, the Chicano art movement is this artistic movement that came out of the political movement for Chicano rights. And it was another form of protest and further creating this Chicano identity, because this is a group of people that had been discriminated against, had been treated unfairly. And instead, they're starting to embrace this culture and not hide it quite so much. And we can see that represented in a lot of their art and a lot of the murals that pop up in Chicano communities during this time. All right, guys, we're going to do our summary. So think back, hey, what's the key things that we just learned today? Go ahead and write those in your own words. Your notes are not complete without your summary.